Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 317 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I could not be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Now, I want to take you back, okay? And I want to take you back to episode number 1, okay? And this is going to be very similar to episode number 1. I have some things to add. But if you go back to over a year ago, I had episode number 1, and it was Let's Talk About Money. It was all about talking about money. And I think it is vital that we talk about money. So I want to talk today about some ways that we can talk about money, about who we should talk about money with. And then ultimately, I want to talk about the benefits of talking about money in our own financial lives and how it can benefit us greatly when it comes to our wealth building, when it comes to our generosity, when it comes to our spending habits, when it comes to everything that we do financially. Talking about money can be absolutely vital. So stick around for a discussion of all that and more in today's episode. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who watches or listens to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, look, I get on this podcast, this YouTube channel, and every day of the week, I am talking about money. Right? It's very second nature to me. It's something that I'm very used to. It's something I'm very comfortable with. And I think the people around me would tell you that I am not uncomfortable with talking about money with them and asking them things about money and trying to learn and trying to help them learn and all of the above, right? I think talking about money is vital. Right? I don't know where this thing came from that said that you can't talk about your financial situation. I don't know where this thing came from that said you can't ask somebody about their finances. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand, hey, how much money do you make? That's not polite, right? It's not polite to say, how much money do you make? Or not polite to say, how much does that thing that you bought cost, right? That house or that car. That's not necessarily a polite thing to do. But if you have a good relationship with somebody, if you can talk to them about those types of things, you can be extremely benefited in the way that you understand your own financial life, right? The more data points that you pick up, right? And this is any topic, right? The more data points that we pick up, the more information that we get about any given topic, the more proficient in that topic we are going to be. And that's what I want. I want us all to be more proficient in managing our own personal financial lives. And the only way that I think that is extremely possible for all is to talk about it. Talk about your money. Talk about your money problems. Talk about your money wins. Talk about everything associated with your financial life. But there are some people with whom you should absolutely do this. And then there's some people like, okay, if you didn't do it with them, that's fine because you don't feel comfortable, whatever, right? But there are some people we absolutely must be doing this with. So let me just start with the obvious. Okay, the obvious is if you are married, you have to talk to your spouse about money. You have to. You have to talk to your spouse about money. We can't be in a position where we don't talk to our spouses about our financial lives, right? We do not need to be in a position where we have separate bank accounts and we have, separate everything, right? Separate this, separate that. This is in your name. This is in my name. This is my money. This is your money, right? That is not how our financial lives are supposed to work, especially when we're married. When we're married, everything is supposed to work as one. And people say, well, can't you have one account where the money goes to, and then that's where you pay all the bills, but then you both have your own separate accounts in order to spend on whatever you want to spend on? Well, that sounds good in theory, and a lot of people do that, and some people do it effectively. But think about this. Anytime you're giving someone their quote-unquote own money, right? Any money that they can do with whatever they please, or at least you say they can do with whatever they please, you're opening up the door for a lot of deception, because why wouldn't they be willing to just do that out of the same joint account, right? If you're going to get on to them about spending money on X, Y, or Z, right? Don't you think that may be something they want to hide from you? Don't you think that's a reason that they may want to spend money in that way where it's coming out of their account and not yours? And then if it's something that's just in their name and they only know the login and they only know the password, it just opens up the door for so much deception in your financial life, and we don't need that, right? We need everything to be joint. We need everything to be together if we're married, and we need to talk about it. And the best place, I think, to talk about it is when it comes to building your budget out, right? Understanding where your money's going, tracking your spending, doing all of these things together, and talking about it, right? Because there is no more ground level personal finance topic than budgeting. Okay. And budgeting takes into account everything. It takes into account your income. It takes into account your giving. It takes into account your saving. It takes into account your spending. It takes into account all of those things, right? And if you are specifically talking about each line item in your budget, then you are talking about your personal finances with your spouse. And that is going to be so beneficial for you two to get on the same page, to know what's going on in your financial life, and to be able to work together pushing forward. Because the thing is, one person working by themselves, trying to drag the other person behind, is going to be much slower than two people working together going forward. Think about, a three-legged race, right? A three-legged race where you have, two individuals, you have, each of them have their inside leg tied together, and they have their outside leg, and they're trying to run, right? It's hard to run a three-legged race when the other person won't run. And it's also hard to run a three-legged race when the other person is doing the opposite rhythm that you are doing, right? Maybe you're both trying to move towards the same place, but you're doing things in a different rhythm, a different cadence, right? But it works perfectly when you know when to swing which foot, when to run with which foot, when to push off, when to move to the other foot, all of these types of things. When you are in sync with your partner in a three-legged race, then you can win. And the same goes for your personal finances, right? Personal finances where you're just trying to drag somebody along would be like, somebody doesn't want to do some type of financial plan. They don't want to be accountable for their money, right? They don't want to be accountable for their financial decisions, right? And that's not going to work very well. It's also not going to work very well. It's also not going to work very well if, you have spouses that are trying to do two different things. You're trying to both get to financial freedom, but you're doing it two different ways. So it's going to be difficult to get there. That would be being out of rhythm. But then if you're in step with one another, if you're doing everything together, if you're working through things, then that would be communicating. That would be working a financial plan, a common financial plan that you work with one another. And I think that is the most effective way that you can win financially with your spouse. But it all relies on your ability to sit down and have conversations, especially early on, having hard conversations about your money, about your financial situation. But you have a couple of those conversations, you get through some of the more difficult things, because those first couple times where you lay out a budget with your spouse, it is painful. It hurts to try to put every dollar into a category and try to agree on that, right? But once you do it a few times, you understand where the other person's priorities are, and you can start moving forward in a more, in a smoother way, right? And then the conversations can really be opened up to things that are a lot more, minute, things that are very specific, very detailed, and you can start fine-tuning your financial life together, and that is a true benefit of talking about your financial life. Now, that is your spouse. You should absolutely talk about your finances with your spouse. Another person or another group of people that you should talk about your finances with and be open and transparent with is a trusted financial advisor. Now, this is not to say that you have to have a financial advisor, okay? I do not, right? And I don't know your life. I don't know if you should or not. But I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people rely on them for the education with their money, for some financial tutelage, some learning relative to their finances. Because that's what an advisor should be. They should be somebody who gives advice. Ultimately, if somebody gives you advice, they're not making the decision for you. They're just giving you advice. And that's the same thing a financial advisor should be doing, just giving you advice and then letting you make the ultimate decision. Okay? Now, the financial advisor needs to be somebody that you can trust, obviously. It needs to be somebody who you have vetted in a very, comprehensive way, right? Maybe you've gone and had some preliminary conversations with this person, not revealing everything to them, but getting information and, just having conversations about their philosophy behind investing and budgeting and, just personal finances in general, right? You can get a good feel for them, vet them. And then ultimately, if you trust them, then by all means, divulge the information, right? And they have a duty, a fiduciary duty to do what is best for you. Okay. And you should talk to them. You should air these types of things out, right? It's like when you talk to a counselor or a therapist, right? Why do you talk to them? You talk to them because there may be something that you're missing, and there may be something that you can do better. And there may be a place that you're broken and you need help to fix yourself. Right? And the same can be true with financial advisors. They are literally financial therapists. They're financial psychologists. They're financial just helpers, right? That's what they are there to be. They're there to provide you with advice. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to you to go back to your life and implement those changes. And if you don't implement them, then that's up to you. But ultimately, they can help you to really put a lot of things on the table that maybe you never considered, because they do this every single day. They go through this process every single day. Now, there are a lot of issues with financial advisors too that, again, if you don't properly vet them, then you could end up in a position where you're being sold products and not given this teaching, not given some new education about finances, right? You're just being taken advantage of for the money that you have and for the possibility of you purchasing some type of financial product, right? That can absolutely happen. You can have financial advisors that are crooks, which that's far less often than you may actually think. But you always hear about the big cases and the big situations where these types of things happen and people's money gets taken advantage of. But ultimately, it's your money. Ultimately, it's your situation, and you have to be cautious about who you divulge information to, and you have to trust that person or those people. So just keep that in mind, and then as you move forward, you should be better off with your financial advisor if you in fact have one. Okay, so that's somebody we should also talk to about our money if we have one, in order to get the most out of our financial situation. Then another set of people that we should be talking about our money with is our children, right? This is a little different, because when we're talking about money with our spouse, or we're talking about money with a financial advisor, that's all about building. It's all about building your own financial life up. That's all about doing all the things that you can do in order to become the best financially that you can be. Okay? But when you start talking about money with your children, what you're doing is you are helping them to become better financially, right? Now, that's not to say that you can't learn something in the process. You absolutely can learn a lot of things in the process, because most people who want to talk about money with their children, they want to learn about 529s and UTMAs and UGMAs, and they want to talk about ESAs, any way to save for college, all these different things, right? And so you may learn a lot in that process, but you're not likely to learn a lot from your child who doesn't know anything about personal finances, okay? But it's important that we talk to our children about money, because ultimately, who do most people leave their money to? Their children. And what happens with most people's money? It gets blown. Okay? And that's not what I want for us, right? I want us to have children who are good stewards of the finances that we leave them, and they're good stewards of their own finances, and prove to us that they can be good stewards of the finances that we leave behind for them. Okay? And if all that is true, and if they can be that, right, that was likely a product of us being good stewards, us being smart, and us talking to our children about money. Now, what are some things that we need to talk to our children about? Well, I think from an early age, you can talk to your children about the uses of money, right? Talk to them about spending, and how to responsibly spend, and how to save and invest, and how to give money, right? And actually have conversations as to what you should be doing with your money in order to get the most out of your financial life, and in order to be the most effective that you can financially in being a good steward of the money that God's given us, okay? So I think that's something that we must talk about with our children. I think budgeting is a huge thing that we can ultimately talk about with our children. And if you are comfortable with it, and I'm okay with this, right? If you're comfortable with showing your kids how much some stuff costs, and helping them to get a better idea of what they can expect when they become, taxpayers, right? And when they become bill-paying adults, then by all means, put that on the table, right? Show them how much it costs when it's hot outside and that electricity bill is running up and you're trying to turn off all the lights in the house and your kid's going, why are you turning off all the lights? Why are you doing this? Why are you, turning up the air? Why are you not making it colder? It's hot outside, right? If they don't understand the cost associated, then that can be a reason that they're not really on the same page as you are, and you can help them to better understand that. Show them how much internet costs, right? They use your Wi-Fi. Show them how much internet costs. Show them how much it costs to have those streaming services that they like so much. Show them all those types of things, right? Show them how much food costs, right? Because we're all going to have to go buy food, and show them the difference between eating out and buying food at the grocery store, and the big differences, and the importance of making a list and going to the grocery store and sticking to the list, and how much that saves you. All those types of things are fantastic things to talk about with your children because they're all applicable to their life, right? Now, some things that I think that you should talk about with your children ultimately should be age appropriate, right? Do I think that you should be talking about mutual funds with your kids when they're 5? No, I don't think that's necessary. I think it's necessary when they're 5 to talk to them about spending money and saving money and giving money. I think that's perfectly fine, and talking about it in a way that they'll understand, right? But I think it's also proper when you have a 16-year-old to talk to them about compound interest, and to be talking about investing, and talking about how they can properly set up their financial lives, and how they can pay for college, and how do you pay for a car, and all these different types of things that are going to benefit them in the near future. Anything that you can do to better prepare your child for their financial future, the better. And it all comes down to having the conversation. All of this is about being intentional, right? Being willing to sit down and talk to these people, right? And talking to your spouse is hard, especially when you have a financial mess with that person. Talking to a financial advisor, it takes you getting up off the couch and actually going and seeing them, or, having Zoom meetings if, nothing else. But that still requires you to have some preparation, know what's going on in your financial life, and to get some good advice and be willing to put all that out on the table. And typically you're putting all that out on the table alongside your spouse, right? And then with your kids, it takes you being willing to say, hey, it's time. Hey, if I don't have this conversation, I'm not doing the best that I can for my child, and having the correct conversations. Now, I understand that some people just don't know, and it's hard to communicate to your children what you just don't know. But I think it is our duty, right, to learn, to get educated, to understand all the things that are going to end up impacting our kids' lives financially, and learn about those things, and then communicate them directly to our children in a way that they would understand. And I think that can, if people talk about building generational wealth, I think one of the biggest ways that we can go about trying to communicate financial principles and become generational wealth builders is by passing on the knowledge that we have about our personal finances, not letting that knowledge just go away with us, okay? So I think that is absolutely key, talking to your children about money. Then I think there's another area that can be useful, but it should be done with some caution. Okay. I think talking to your friends about money can be a real big benefit, but obviously it comes at a risk because, again, there's the taboo part of it all, right? Are they going to think that it's, overstepping your bounds when you're, just trying to help them or trying to get some help, or, are you going to, divulge too much information to them, or are they going to divulge too much information to you? You want it to be a mutually beneficial conversation, right? So I think talking to your friends about money can be useful, but there must be either boundaries set up, or you have to, trust this person so much that you're willing to lay things out on the table, and you're willing to show them things that are going on in your financial life, and you're willing to see if they can help. Now, friends can be huge when it comes to our options. Okay. Yes, financial advisors, I think, are extremely good for this as well. And I don't think that we should be going around just taking investment tips and stock tips from friends and all these types of things. I don't think that's necessarily what I'm getting at. But I'll also tell you this. All financial advisors don't know all things, okay? And all financial advisors aren't going to give you all options at all times, okay? So talking to your friends who have maybe been through a particular place before you, or done things before you have, I think can be really useful. So I'll just give you an example, right? Something that I think probably has been done before many, many times, and that you can think about talking to a friend about money in this way. Let's say that you are trying to send your kid to college, right? And you're saving up money, investing money to send your kid to college, or you are wanting to start doing so. And you may go to a friend who just had kids in college or paid for their college, and you know he did or you know she did, and you go and you say, hey, how did you do that? Right? How did you save money up for them? Because I know what I'm thinking about and what I'm trying to put in place. And I just want to know if this is the best option and know if this is what's best in our situation and all these different types of things, because I saw how you did it and I would like to do it in a similar way. And I think that's a good way to approach a conversation with a friend. It's much more difficult to have a conversation with a friend when you're coming into the conversation as an adversary, right? When you're coming in saying, hey, you're doing this wrong and I want to show you why you're doing this wrong. Nobody really responds well to that, right? But people respond well to you saying, hey, I'd like to help you with this, right? Or people also respond well when you need help and you go, hey, I would like your help. I think you've done something good and I would like your assistance in figuring out how this may work in my own life, right? I think this is something that we need to be doing. We need to be talking to our friends about money, but we need to have friends that we can trust to talk about our money with. Because if you're talking to your friend who's, an alcoholic or a drug addict about, hey, I've got this much money here and this much there, you're just opening yourself up for something fishy to occur, right? You're opening yourself up for situations that you don't want to have to deal with. So only talk about money with friends that you can trust, that will keep the information that you want confidential, that will give you good advice or will take heed to the advice that you give them, and that won't get offended at the fact that you are willing to give them advice or that you're looking for advice, right? I think it's perfectly fine, and I think we can really help one another out. And just do it in a way that's, from a loving heart, that's from a, way that you're just trying to help somebody else. You're trying to, do the best for them, or you're trying to get something out of it. And you're just trying to be humble. You're trying to just get the most out of a situation that you possibly can and get the most out of a relationship that you possibly can. And I think that is a perfectly fine thing to do. Now, a place where I think it is hard to talk about money, but sometimes necessary, is with our parents. Okay, I think our parents put up some of the highest walls when it comes to talking about money. But the problem is that in a lot of cases, we need to talk about money with our parents for many reasons, right? But maybe your parents are aging, right? And you're going to have to figure out how they pay for a nursing home, or how they're going to pay for assisted living, or how they're going to pay for XYZ. You're going to need to know where the money is, what they have going on, what their situation is, in order to understand exactly what you should do in order to help them, right? Or let's say that your parents have historically not been good with money, and you're legitimately concerned about them, right? You're concerned that they're not going to be able to retire with dignity. You're concerned that they have a bunch of debt. You're concerned that they don't have any emergency savings, and you want to not necessarily confront them, but you want them to make better decisions. That's going to be hard, right? That's a hard thing to do, right? But ultimately, we feel this need to help our parents in a lot of situations like that. And I think that, it's necessary. And again, I think that we can have those conversations in a loving way. Now, again, this does not mean that there's going to be love that is reciprocated. It doesn't mean that you're going to be met with loving rhetoric, but it does mean that maybe at least you give it a try. Ultimately, there are going to be people who don't want help, right? And there's going to be people who they're not willing to give you any information. And guess what? All you can do to that, since it's not your life and it's not your choice, is to step back and go, all right, that's fine. And don't bring it up again, right? Don't push the issue, especially when it's something that somebody else is offended by or something that somebody else is not willing to divulge. Don't push the issue and just let it be. And ultimately, it's not your life. It's not your responsibility to keep up with your parents if they are not going to allow you to help, okay? But that's one side of talking to your parents about money. I think there's another side that's really, really great, and it's really similar to talking to your friends about money. And it's the experience side of things, right? It's the side of things that says, hey, I haven't done this before, but I've seen how you've done this. Can you help me? Can you show me what this process looks like? Hey, I'm a first-time home buyer. You've bought houses before. What happens here, right? Hey, maybe you just moved into your own place for the first time. Hey, I've never set up an account with the electric company. Can you help me do that, right? I've never had to, transfer money to this, that, or the other. Can you help me do that? Right? I think all of those things are fantastic, right? And they're ways that we can learn, right? Ultimately, that's what this all comes down to. Talking about money means one of two things, right? It means either you learn more about your own financial situation, right? Or the person or people you're talking to will learn more about their financial situation. And I think either way, we're talking about positive things happening, right? We're talking about positivity. And if nothing else, if you're not able to help the other person, like I said, if they're closed off and they don't want to talk about it or they don't want your help, then don't push it on them, right? It's perfectly okay to not push your help on them and not push them into a situation that they're not comfortable with. And guess what? Maybe they'll just know, and you'll have planted that seed that's just like, hey, if they end up wanting the information in the future, if they end up wanting your help in the future, then you can give it to them. Okay, but for the time being, it's just not going to happen. Look, I want us to have strong financial relationships, and I want us to be open about our financial situations, right? The more transparent we are about our financial situations, the less we have to hide. The more we are transparent and honest with other people, the more we can get out of the situation and the more they can get out of it as well. Look, I just want us to be good stewards of our finances, and I don't want us to be prideful enough to think that we're the only ones who know anything about our own situation and nobody knows what I'm going through and nobody knows how to handle my money but me, because that's just not true. Right? It's just not true that there aren't other people in similar situations. It's not true that there aren't other people who want to do the same things that you want to do. Right? There are people out there in the same shoes. So go help them or go find help from people who have walked in those shoes before you. Okay. And I think that's a perfectly healthy thing to do. And it helps us to build strong relationships outside of money as well. Right? Think about if you can talk about something as visceral, right? And something as interconnected to our emotions and our soul as money seems to be in many given times, right? I think you can start having conversations about just about anything, right? If you can have conversations with your spouse about your financial situation and be really open about that, right? Then you can start having conversations about other things in your life, right? That you can be real open and honest about. Maybe you're having other problems that aren't associated with your finances. Guess what? You can start getting those other problems cleaned up too. So many people talk about cleaning up their financial lives being correlated with cleaning up other parts of their lives, right? People talk about cleaning up their financial lives being correlated with losing weight, right? Because they have to learn to be disciplined and they have to learn to, do things by a certain regimen with their finances. Well, they do the same thing with the way that they eat and the way that they work out. And guess what? They lose 60, 70, 100 pounds, right? On purpose. Again, not in an unhealthy way. People who needed to lose that much weight, right? So that type of thing can happen. Or you have, spouses who they couldn't work together on their finances, but then they finally did. And now they, have a better and healthier marriage. And it seems like they don't fight about frivolous stuff anymore. And they, are far more on the same page because guess what? They've learned how to communicate, right? If nothing else, talking about money is going to help us to be better communicators with others, build better relationships. And that is just a good life skill to have. I don't care so much about your money in that way. That's just a good life skill to have. So we need to talk about our money. We need to be open. We need to be transparent, but with the right people and at the right times. Because obviously, if you talk about these things at the wrong times, then you can just be done from the start, right? If you're trying to bring this up around a dinner table to a certain person, might not be the best time or the best idea. If you're, you have this person privately and on your own, and you want to just pick their brain, or you want to, talk to them about something, then that may be a better situation for them and for you, because you'll not feel so embarrassed. They won't feel so embarrassed, and you'll be able to open up with one another and build those relationships. So ultimately, I think it's a very good thing. Talk about money with the right people and at the right times, and you will be better off financially for it. And you will be able to build a stronger financial life and push on towards financial freedom in ways that you never thought that you could before. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long-form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in tomorrow as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.